Hello and welcome to our webinar. Thank you for attending. My name is Brendan Austin. I'm the director of the FPM consulting group at LPA Software Solutions. We'll go over in a minute who LPA is and what we do. Today we're going to be talking about two separate topics around planning analytics on the cloud. First, we're going to be talking about the new admin tools that have been released that allowed you to monitor, maintain, and do some administration type tasks of your TM1 databases. And the second part of the webinar, we're going to go over the cloud infrastructure changes that IBM is rolling out to all the new, all the cloud clients, and maybe what that means to you as a customer. What are the tasks that you actually need to work on, and maybe some things that you may need assistance with, and LPA could help. So here's our agenda that we're going to go through today. A quick overview of what LPA is. I'm going to jump into the administration portal, some slides on that. We're going to do a demo of that administration portal. And finally, we'll go over the infrastructure upgrade changes. A little bit about LPA Software Solutions. We're an IBM Analytics and Information Management reseller and consulting organization. We were founded in 2001. We are a platinum business partner of IBM. We are headquartered in Rochester, New York, but we have consultants spread out throughout the United States. We have a lot of new clients and a lot of repeat business over the years. We have a lot of industry knowledge in a bunch of different industries: public sector, healthcare, government, education, hospitality, to name a few. But we really deal with any industry that is out there. We are also a Pitney Bowes partner for location intelligence and data. And as far as our consultants go, we are all certified. We have over 100 certifications amongst us. We average 10 plus years of experience out in the real world. We have expertise in data warehousing, predictive, BI, financial performance management, which is what we're talking about today, as well as cognitive computing. We're also a lab services partner, so we do a lot of work with IBM Lab Services directly. A little bit about the new administration part of planning analytics on the cloud. You'll notice when you get upgraded, when you log into the planning analytics workspace, there's a new icon that will display, and I'll show you in the demo here in a minute when we get in there. And when you click on that administration icon, it brings up a screen that looks just like this. What this shows on the screen is different boxes and gauges indicating all the different TM1 instances that you have up and running. So by default, when you're on the cloud, you have one TM1 instance named TM1. But optionally, you can set up multiple instances for different things. You may have one for financial reporting, another one for budgeting, another one maybe for payroll, etc. And you could see each one of those that is running up here on the screen. The gauges on the screen tell you the percentage in memory that is being used, as well as the CPU and disk space for the total system. So it kind of tells you how you're looking as far as a health check or a dashboard, if you will, currently. So do you have any database that's using a lot more than it should, that's maybe not performing properly? That would show you indicated in the color coding that's on the screen. If you see a red X, it indicates the metric that you've set up is actually exceeded. The critical threshold value, which means that it's in a bad state. It's something that you need to look at, just like on a dashboard in your car. If you see a red light, it indicates something is wrong. A yellow icon is a warning, so you're in that, it may be okay threshold, but you need to take a look at it before it gets red. And a green check mark indicates that all is good with that database, and it's okay to go. On the next screen, These are some of the thresholds that you can set up, and again, we'll go over this in the demo. You can come into the configuration settings and say what you consider to be critical for any one of these things. So you've got blocked threads. That's when your TM1 service is in a waiting state because something is getting blocked from writing to a particular cell, or there's a process running that's backing up other things. So you can go in there and put the number that you're concerned with, and it will change the thresholds on your main screen from that. CPU usage, so you are allocated so much CPU for your cloud environment, and you can put in there if you'd be concerned if it's reaches the threshold. Same thing with memory usage. Although you do have an original cap on that memory usage, IBM can ratchet that utilization up for your memory. But you can go in there and set that and see if it's constantly yellow or red. You could actually request IBM to bump you up to the next level of memory on the disk for the cloud. And same thing with disk usage. It tells you how much of your disk space that you've been allocated on a cloud instance that you're actually utilizing. So next we can configure some of the other parameters. One thing that we can do is set how often that dashboard is updated. When you come in and you look at it, you can set where the logging can be exported from that dashboard. You can set what the thresholds are. You can set what the alerts might be. So optionally, this system will send out emails based upon the error message that are coming from the dashboard itself. And you can also set up configuration parameters for your TM1 instances. This is actually lines out of your tm1s.cfg file that typically you have to remote onto the server or your data directory and make changes to that config file and restart the TM1 instance after you make changes to that. There's this new front end that actually allows you to make changes to the parameters in that config file directly through this front end. Okay, so under the General Settings tab, you can actually go in and specify at which level and which the auto refresh time is for each critical, concern, or safe status item should be. So if it's a critical status, I think that the default is it refreshes every 30 seconds. If it's a concern or yellow, it refreshes every 40 seconds. And if it's safe, every 55 seconds. You can bump those up or down depending on what your requirements are. You can also go in and say which databases will be included in that dashboard. So you may have some databases that maybe aren't in use all the time, or maybe you're using them to test something and you don't want to actually include them on your dashboard. You can actually go in and hide those individually. Okay, so next is the logging. So you can come in here and actually specify what level of logging you want to include in a log that you're going to export. Come in here and pick the items that you want to include in that log, whether you want it done at the info level or the debug level. So the info is a lot less information than the debug. The debug shows you all the different options and parameters and such in that log, but you can specify what that log looks like right on the screen. The debug gives you detailed technical messages that are useful when you're working directly with IBM customer support. The database log is written to a file called tm1server.log, which you can then download to review and send off to IBM support if you have the need. The next screen is actually where you set up the alerts. So these alerts can be set up by database. So you can have different parameters based upon the different databases that you've got on. So for instance, if you have one that you're using for financial reporting, it may be more critical to find out about an issue immediately than something that's just being used for planning maybe once a year. So you can set those alerts at a different threshold than at a different instance. So here we can set what the memory threshold is, threads waiting, threads running. So the number of items that are actually running physically on the server at the same time, or how long they're running. If they run for 50 minutes, then it's a concern. Anything running less than 50 minutes it would be a green status. If the server becomes unresponsive for at least 10 seconds here, then it would actually send out an email to the user designated below. And then also if any chores fail. So you can set up an automatic notification now if you have a chore that for some reason won't finish or finishes with an error. You can actually put that someone is notified with that email ID at the bottom of the screen. Database configuration is the next section. So when you navigate through here, there's three main categories for your database configuration, or your tm1s.cfg file that's sitting behind the scenes. There's administration, performance, and modeling. And as you click on the section that you want to work on, the screen will expand and give you the different options underneath it. So under administration is default and external database. Modeling is startup, rules, spreading, default, and TI. And performance category includes MTQ and memory. So when you click through those different options, it gives you the different parameters that you can set in that configuration. You can go ahead and apply those changes directly on the screen. Anything that requires that is a yes or no, or a flag from one to another, like true to false or yes to no, or anything like that, would require a instance restart after that change is made. If a change is made to just a numeric value that's got a range, that is more of a dynamic change, and that change does not necessitate a server restart immediately. So you could actually do that application, and that change would take place immediately. These are the different options within those administration configuration parameters. So under administration, we've got the default category, which includes enable sandbox dimension. The default value is false. The other option is true. Again, if you changed it from false to true, that's a one or other. You'd have to restart the instance for that to be seen. The external database, on the other hand, is a range. So the SQL row set size, if you changed it from 50 to 60, that's within a range of values. You could just apply that change, and the next time you run a SQL statement through Turbo Integrator, it will use that new parameter. On the modeling section, there's some different line items. You notice these are the same line items that are in your tm1s.cfg file if you use the default config file. It's a little bit more friendly to go in there and make these changes through the web-based front end and not having to remote into the desktop session to actually do that. This is where you can actually monitor and manage the activity that is currently going on your TM1 instances. So it gives you a chart, and it tells you for each time slice how many users are on there, how many threads are active, what the memory usage is, the CPU usage, and the disk usage. It tells you down at the bottom what the current active threads are. So whether that's a user thread, whether it's just the system thread, what's going on, if that thread is blocked, if it's a TI process or what have you. It tells you the number of threads that are in run, wait, and other status. And it allows you to cancel these threads as they're running. So if for some reason you have a user that calls you up and says, the system's locked up, or I'm running a TI process, I can't kill it, can you go in and look at this? You could actually come into this screen, find that thread, right click on that thread that's a user thread and actually cancel that thread or kill it from this back end. You can disconnect users from the back end as well. So if you have a user that's gone in there and has made some huge cube view that's taking up a lot of memory, and therefore locking everybody else out of the system, you could actually disconnect them directly from this back end without actually working with them directly. You also have the ability to stop and start the database. So on that main screen where you've got the individual boxes for your TM1 instances, at the bottom of those boxes, you've got the ability to stop and restart if a database is running. And if it's not running right now, you have the run icon. So if for some reason your database shuts down because of an error or what have you, or you need to stop it, or you've stopped it manually through the front end and you need to restart it, you can do that directly from the screen and not have to go to the planning control services screen that's in your welcome kit any longer. You can do that directly from the screen by stopping and starting. You can also download the log files from the screen. And if for some reason the database becomes completely unresponsive and you can't shut it down from the front end, you can't save the data, you can end the TM1 database process. Now what that's going to do though, and you have to be very careful with this, is any data that's sitting in that log file could be lost. So when you end that process, it basically wipes everything that's sitting in memory out of the TM1 database memory. And so when it restarts, those transactions that were sitting in that log file may not be recovered when it restarts. You always want to try to do a save data prior to shutting down those TM1 services. But in the rare case that you can't, you can kill the database connection or database here and try to restart it and see if that data has been recovered. Okay, so next we're going to go through and do a quick demo of the actual system, and then we'll move on to the infrastructure changes. So I'm going to go ahead and log in as the administrator to my planning analytics environment here. And when I click login, you'll notice I get the welcome screen, and then I have the Watson piece here, the explore and predict. But I also have this new administration console over here, and this is where we're going to go for the demo today. So I'm going to click on that. And you'll notice what comes up is it tells me, first of all, these are the different instances of TM1 that I've included in this dashboard. The ones that are in green are up and running. They're within the thresholds that I've set up. The ones that are black are not started yet. I can actually restart them or run them here directly from the screen. So I just click on that and it'll actually start it up kind of in the background. Up on the top, it tells me my total memory that I've used for my entire instance. It tells me how much I've been allocated in my environment. So I'm using 17 of my 65 gigs that I've been allocated from IBM. I'm using 16% of my CPU that's been allocated and 19.1% of my disk space here. If I go over to the Go scorecards, and I actually click on this to open it up, this actually tells me kind of what's going on right now with the database. It tells me how many active threads are that are running. 2 of these are system. So these are 2 cores that are actually being used up just to service calculations and such. I have 1 user that's actually attached to the system right now, no locks, and over here it tells me whether it's been running or other or free based upon the period of time. So if you do have a bunch of users on the system, you can come in here and see kind of what the activity is, maybe what they're experiencing at the time. You can search for different things. You have the ability here to actually cancel this thread. So if it's running, or I can actually disconnect this user from the system completely. I also have the ability to come up here and download information for the log. So when I click that, if I've got it configured properly, I can actually download that config file up above. And I can also make some changes on this display by clicking the gear icon and specify how often that's actually going to get refresh, the database usage. So I just increase the refresh time a little bit, so it's not doing it every split second here. If I go back to Go Scorecards, and I click on the settings up at the top, this is what applies to all TM1 databases. So this settings is across all instances of TM1. So here, I can first say what the auto refresh is against the different statuses that I've got set up automatically. By default, it's set up to refresh every 60 seconds. You can, of course, increase this or decrease it based upon what you want to do. I can restore the defaults back to what they were before. And then down below, I can pick which databases are actually being included in my screen as well. So maybe I want to uncheck that, and I click Apply, and it will it says that it's been successfully applied. So when I go back to the main screen, that one would disappear. If I go over to the threshold section, here's where I can specify what those ranges are for me for a concern and what's critical. So for block threads, CPU usage, and memory. And then so that's for at the database level. At the complete system level, I could have different thresholds. Of course, they would be higher than the database thresholds. But once you get to concern or critical, it would then potentially send an alert if you have that configured properly. If I go to the alert section, again, I've got the databases section as well as the system usage section. So here I can come in and specify for particular databases when to trigger a notification to a user. Okay, so again, here's where I can put lower thresholds on my more critical TM1 instances that need to be up and running and need to be more responsive than others. So maybe my Go Scorecards is my primary. If memory usage is at 30%, I want to do something. If I've got threads waiting more than 30 seconds, I want to send a thing. No process in this instance should run more than 40 minutes. And if the database is unresponsive for just 5 seconds, 15 seconds will do it, your minimum is 10. I want it to notify user. And of course, if the database is shut down, that's an automatic, or if the chore fails, it's an automatic. And down here, I can add my email address to go ahead and apply that to. And when I click apply, it actually saves it for this instance. And I could go in and set up the alerts on the other instances as well. You may have different people that need to get notified on the different instances, but you can do that right here and there. So that's on the database side. On the system usage side, of course, this is for the entire system itself. So, if you want all the entire TM1 instances down on the cloud, You can have a different set of email IDs here or the same ones. It's all depending on what you want. On the database configuration side, again, I get to pick which instance I'm going to configure here. So here we're going to go with the scorecards instance, and I've got the 4 different areas of the TM1 configuration that I can actually change. So at first is the administration section. If I go to the default area, these are all the default line items that are in the tm1s.config file. If you looked at the blank tm1s.cfg file that's actually in your data directory or on your server where tm1 is running, these are all different lines in there, and you can go in there and make changes to those. And based upon what the parameter is, you make these changes and then click apply. Here, if we go into the audit log, we can say whether we want to enable it and what type. A server log, same thing. External databases, so setting your connectors, your row sets, etc., and then your TM1 web parameters. Okay, so if we go off administration and go to modeling, here's where we can set up our persistent feeders, information on rules. So if you want separate in and C rules, etc. So your TM1 operations guide will tell you what these configuration parameters will do, but it allows you a lot easier way to change them than changing the tm1s.cfg file directly. Let's go down to the default. So this is the default section under here. If we go to performance, again, you've got different classifications of the different parameters, and when you click on those, it'll give you the parameters underneath that section. So it's organized a little bit better than the tm1s.cfg file it is itself. And when you make a change, you just click apply. Again, if you're changing something that requires a number and a range or such, or something that's named rather than just a true to a false or false to a true or a yes to a no or no to a yes, you would actually need to restart that instance from the screen after that change is made for it to take effect. Okay, so we're going to click apply and go back to the main screen here. So again, you'll see all the instances that are up and running. You can sort statuses by name, etc. If you have a large number of things running, you can type in the search and it'll reorder them based upon that search. The intent is that IBM will continue to develop this administration console. So additional functions will continue to be added to this as new versions come up. And so now we're going to jump to the IBM infrastructure changes that are being pushed out for all of the clients currently on the cloud. So I'm going to just queue up my PowerPoint again. Okay, so talking about the infrastructure upgrade. So IBM is rolling this cloud infrastructure out to all of the active clients that are on the cloud infrastructure. Right now, these impact the data, web services, and remote desktop functionality that you guys have got now. It's commonly called the data web enriched tier of the products. Basically, the upgrade is pushing out some network infrastructure changes, operating system versions, and new middleware, basically to beef up the security in the back end. And it's moving their deployments to the new environments in the new infrastructure. These new environments are built with IBM best practices to provide a more stable and secure software as a service instance for you guys. What does that mean? So first of all, the planning analytics version that you guys are on right now, as part of this upgrade, you will be upgraded to the latest and greatest version of planning analytics on the week that you're scheduled for the upgrade. It also means that you're going to get new IP addresses for the remote desktop server session, as well as any of the client connections. With that, you're going to get a new welcome kit. So the PDF document that you got from IBM when you started your cloud install, you're going to get a new welcome kit with new modular passwords in it, as well as new connections to the system. Your named instances or your named URL for all of your end users is not going to change. Again, it will not change, but some of the passwords to the modeler accounts will change. Okay. What changes will you see? So again, on the remote desktop session, which is going to change, the remote desktop that you will be signing into will change with this new infrastructure change. Anything that you put on that remote desktop session on the desktop itself will not be migrated to the new infrastructure. So be sure that if you've saved things to that desktop session, whether it be reports or files or what have you, instructions, anything that you want to get moved over, you need to put in that S drive or your data directory structure that you've got. And you should have a shortcut to that S drive on that remote desktop. So move that over, copy that over, and it will get, then you can access it in your new instance. Also in your remote desktop, the Internet Explorer version will be updated to Explorer 11, as well as they're going to upgrade the Excel version that's running on that remote desktop to Excel 2016. So what is required by the IBM customers, and specifically on the business owner side? One big thing that needs to change is the secure gateway connections. And what, for those of you guys that don't know and that aren't using it, the secure gateway is a piece of software that runs both on your client network as well as the cloud environment. And it basically creates a VPN tunnel between the two. And it allows for data to be loaded from your on-premise systems up to the cloud environment. So those connections and the secure gateway software itself is going to be upgraded, and those connections themselves need to be reset up to your on-premise systems. So it's your existing secure gateway connections, the second bullet, between the on-premise data sources and the cloud environment need to be reset up and tested very quickly. That's with your usernames and your passwords that you've set up to your databases. They're fairly easy to set up once that secure gateway is reinstalled. One thing to make note of, they're not pushing this infrastructure change to both development and production at exactly the same time. They will actually do your development upgrade 2 weeks prior to your production upgrade. So you will have time to go ahead and make those changes to your secure gateway, test all of your Turbo Integrator processes, make sure that everything's running properly with these new connection settings before you go to the production upgrade. What actions are required more than likely on the IT side? So some of the other things that are changing are the Cognos Command Center. So for those of you that are not familiar with Cognos Command Center is kind of an automation tool that can sit behind the planning analytics system that can move data, it can restart a service, it can take a service down, copy the data and restart something else. You can create triggers in it. You can do all types of database administration type tasks automatically behind the scenes. There's also a monitoring system, an alert system, a workflow system, etc. with Cognos Command Center. As part of this, The version is getting updated from 10.2.3 to 10.2.4, which requires an uninstall and a reinstall on the client side. More than likely IT has installed that if you guys are using it. Quick uninstall, reinstall. As part of that reinstall, some of the ports have changed that uses or that are used by Planning Analytics. Port 3389 for the RDP session is no longer required, but 443, which is a more common port, is now required for the RDP session. The FTPS client now uses ports 4460 through 4500 versus some of the old configurations use different sets of ports. This range is more in the commonly used range for FTPS. And then your IP addresses for your remote desktop session, again, are going to change the IP address. So you may need to do some changes on the network to allow connection to those IP addresses. And then port 6167 for incoming is no longer required for Cognos Command Center. So that port can be closed down now on your firewall. How can LPA help you? So if this is all looking too daunting and you guys need assistance with either this infrastructure change or anything Cognos or Planning Analytics related, we can help you by doing training, doing upgrades. If you do this upgrade and or you're using the on-premise version, we do lots of cube and report development, administration of databases, staff augmentation. So if you've had some turnover in your TM1 administrator role, or you need some assistance with administering Planning Analytics or TM1 or any of the FPM tools, we can do staff augmentation for you until you actually staff up again. We also do strategy projects. So if you've been thinking about where's Planning Analytics going versus where you're sitting today, as far as what needs to be built, etc., we can help with strategy as well. If any of these you need help with, please reach out to us. You can either go to lpa.com and contact us through there, or you can email me below brendan.austin@lpa.com. I'll be more than happy to help you and guide you in the right direction. So now we are going to take some questions. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and type them in the window, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. If for some reason we do not get to your question by the time we need to end, we will follow up with you in the next day or so with a specific response to your question. Again, I thank you for any questions that you ask. We do have a few that we've got here. The first question is, does the new administration screen replace the control web page that we have in our welcome kit? Yes and no. One, you still can go to that control services screen that is part of your welcome kit. What is on that screen is very rudimentary as far as just stopping the service, restarting it, or killing it. It doesn't give you any type of monitoring tools. You can't kill a thread. It's just literally the database itself. What I would recommend is start using the new administration tool, because you can do so much more with it. You can actually find out why something needs to be killed, what's locking it up, how many users are impacted, etc. But they still will both be available for a while. Second question is, why is IBM requiring all these cloud customers to upgrade? It's a good question. So the upgrade is necessary to implement some new secure environment changes that they're making. Again, it's to make sure that your data is very secure. It's the latest, greatest firmware changes, hardware changes, etc. It's locking the ability to lock down some of those ports that had to be opened before. So we'll just make sure that you've got a more secure and stable environment with this new platform. The next question we got is, can we choose to not perform this infrastructure upgrade? This is a good question. I've actually had some of our clients contact us in the last several weeks and say, we're happy with the version that we're on. Do we have to do this? Unfortunately, no, it cannot be ignored. The upgrade is required because it's an infrastructure change. The entire platform is getting moved to this new infrastructure. And again, it is in your best interest to move to it, again, to make it more stable and secure. IBM is assisting with a lot of the back-end upgrade process. So your tasks on your end are very minimal, and it's more with the tools that are specifically installed on your network somewhere and or ports that have been configured on your firewall need to be changed. So unfortunately, it is a required upgrade, but it is in your best interest, in your company's best interest. And I think this is probably the last question that we've got time for. The last question is, can the monitoring dashboard send text messages or just email? It's a really good question. As of for right now, it is just email. But you can put in an enhancement request on IBM.com and put that request in there. I believe it's being talked about because so many people use the text messages, especially if they're at home. For some reason, they wouldn't receive an email on their personal phone or what have you. But right now, it is an email notification only through that alert system. So that's all the time that we have for questions for right now. I do want to thank you for attending our webinar today. And please, if you need any assistance with your planning analytics environment, with this upgrade or training or anything having to do with planning analytics, Cognos, or information management or predictive analytics, please give LPA a shout out, and we'd be happy to help you. Thanks again, and hope to talk to you soon. Thanks.